All right, Colleen, thank you very much. Now we want to bring you up to date on some breaking news just into the newsroom. One of the men accused in the Crystal Rogers case has now asked a judge to dismiss his charges. We're talking about Steve Lawson, his attorney, filing a new motion today, claiming his client was promised immunity in exchange for testimony, but now says the state is going back on its offer, charging him with conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with evidence. The attorney says Lawson was interviewed by local investigators as far back as 2015, by the FBI in 2020, and then testified to a grand jury in 2023. All of those conversations, the attorney says, was in exchange for a promise of immunity. Well, when he was indicted earlier this year, the attorney says it was because he assisted in moving Crystal Rogers' car. The attorney either wants these charges dropped or he wants that testimony to be excluded from evidence. According to documents, the prosecutor, quote, made it clear that Lawson's statements could not be used against him. Well, now the attorney wants this motion to be heard on March 21st, when both Brooks Houck and Steve Lawson's son, Joseph Lawson, are expected to be in court.
And our other top story tonight at 5, we're following closely more searches and more discoveries in the growing criminal case against the former Clark County Sheriff, Jamie Knoll.
Knoll is accused of stealing millions of dollars in public money for his own personal gain, as well as to benefit families and friends. Recent search warrants took Indiana State Police to properties in Scottsburg and Deputy Township, where investigators say they found vintage cars and U.S. government shipping containers.
And our Focus investigator John Charlton tonight has more on what was found and how that's allegedly linked right back to Knoll.
Jamie Knoll has a pattern of using funds from the Utica Township Volunteer Firefighters Association to buy cars, putting those cars in his name, then reselling them and pocketing the money. That's what the former Clark County Sheriff is accused of doing. And one of those cars in question is a 57 Chevy Bel Air. In a recent search warrant, and according to Indiana State Police, a tipster told them that he believes the car is stored inside this former hardware store on East Curtin Street in Scottsburg. That tipster said former Scott County Sheriff Kenny Hubanks owns and rents the old store, and that Hubanks took him inside to show him the Bel Air and several other classic cars. In the warrant is documentation, ISP says, showing Knoll sold the 57 Bel Air to Hubanks in September of 2022 for $39,500. Hubanks wrote the check from an account with EH Insurance, the insurance company he owns and the company which insures Utica Township Fire. Meanwhile, ISP found that between 2025 and 2022, the Clark County Sheriff's Office received $7 million in military surplus, including forklifts and generators. Much of that equipment had been moved to unknown locations in U.S. government and military shipping containers. According to a search warrant released Tuesday, information led investigators to a property on West Corporation Drive in Deputy, Indiana. On Sunday, ISP investigators say they found 26 containers. Several were open and appeared to contain surplus equipment. Investigators also found a surplus forklift, as well as a surplus train from the old Jeffersonville powder plant. John Charlton, WHAS11, on your side.
For more information on the search warrants released today in the Jamie Knoll case, check out the story on our homepage at WHAS11.com.
We should never make it harder for someone to obtain a roof over their head, a safe place to call home, and that's exactly what this bill tries to do.
Today, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear pushing back on a controversial bill that advocacy groups say will worsen the affordable housing gap, but bill supporters say it's about protecting landlords' property rights. Beshear vetoed House Bill 18 this morning at one of Louisville's largest public housing complexes. That's the Beecher Terrace Apartments.
Now, the legislation would affect both the city's landlords and renters. Our senior reporter Isaiah Kim Martinez and chief photojournalist Philip Merle explain what's on the line.
Here we go.
Kentucky's governor putting pen to paper in Louisville Tuesday, pushing back on a housing bill likely destined to become law.
Thank you.
Andy Beshear vetoed House Bill 18, following a fairly easy passage through the state legislature. The bill would block local governments from enforcing their own housing ordinances that ban discrimination based on source of income. Louisville has this kind of local law to prevent landlords from rejecting tenants solely because they rely on federal housing assistance, including Section 8.
And it disallows property owners the ability to vet properly their prospective tenants.
House Bill 18 would essentially nullify that. Supporters say it's about protecting landlords' property rights. Bashir, though, calling the bill morally wrong and mean.
The people that would be harmed by this bill are those with disabilities, senior citizens, low-income families, and our homeless veterans.
There's an argument being made that this bill will only worsen existing problems, saying it'll lengthen stays inside shelters, both space and time the city doesn't have enough of.
And it's just going to mean that we're going to have to make twice as many calls to find a landlord that's willing to work with us, that's willing to take a voucher.
What's for certain, Louisville's housing gap is vast, and the community continues to call for help. Isaiah Kim Martinez, WHAS11 on your side.
Republicans have dominant control of, as you know, of the state legislature in Frankfort, and they hold the power to override the governor's veto.
If that does happen, House Bill 18 would become law.
Also happening new today, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says he disagrees with the comments that a Democratic state lawmaker made about child sex dolls. It's related to House Bill 207, which would make possessing, trafficking, or importing a child sex doll illegal. The measure already passed the House in Frankfort with unanimous support on both sides of the aisle, but it's the comments made by Democratic Senator Karen Berg of Louisville during a committee hearing last week that are being criticized today. Berg referenced some online research that she conducted about these types of dolls.
There are what they call MAPs, minor attracted persons. And the limited amount of research that's done on these dolls, guys, suggests that they actually, for people who are attracted to minors, that these dolls actually decrease their proclivity to go out and attack children.
Right after her question, the committee allowed experts to refute those claims, saying the dolls were actually escalating behavior.
He provides the assessments for sexual offenders and reports back to the court. So for him to provide this letter, and what he says it is actually, it's an escalation in behavior if you're using a child sex doll.
Republicans have called on Governor Andy Beshear, a Democrat, to respond and denounce Senator Berg's comments. Today, we did ask Andy Beshear about the issue.
I disagree with the comments. I've been working with the Kentucky State Police and Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky on this bill since before the session. I'll sign it when it gets to me. It should pass. It'll be a good law.
Senator Berg did release a statement last Friday after her comments, clarifying what she meant, saying, quote, "As a mom and a physician, I am, of course, deeply concerned with the harm of pedophilia, and I regret if my question in committee did not convey that. I voted in favor of Senate Bill 207 to outlaw child sex dolls, a stance that aligns with my commitment to safeguarding the well-being of our youth and holding perpetrators accountable."
Kentucky lawmakers have approved an oversight task force for JCPS, but not without hearing passionate opposition from the superintendent, Dr. Marty Polio. The House resolution creates a task force to review districts with more than 75,000 students. Well, JCPS is the only district in Kentucky that meets that qualification. The task force would be made up of lawmakers, someone from the state's auditor's office, the Louisville mayor's office, and appointed members who live in Louisville. Polio thinks they're wasting time and shouldn't be focused on JCPS.
And if this is truly about student outcomes, then put in that bill that any district below a certain level of proficiency that is similar to JCPS will face the same investigation, task force, commission to find out about outcomes.
Polio believes there are 3 top priorities facing our schools right now. 1, teacher vacancies, 2, bus driver vacancies, and 3, student attendance. He said that is what the Education Committee should be worried about right now. Louisville Metro Police are investigating a violent accident that sent several children to the hospital today. This was the scene just before 10 this morning at the corner of 18th and Chestnut. The accident involved two vehicles. You can see here one of those vehicles ended up rolled on its side. Police tell us 3 children and 1 adult were sent to the hospital with injuries, but everyone is expected to survive. Right now, police are investigating what might have caused that accident.
And new developments today of the story we first told you about at 11 o'clock last night. Authorities say 2 adults and 3 children were killed in that small plane crash just west of downtown Nashville, Tennessee. The flight originated from the Mount Sterling, Montgomery County, Kentucky airport right here in central Kentucky. The pilot told air traffic control that he lost engine power and had circled around after overflying the John C. Toon Airport. The airport cleared a runway and told him to glide in for a landing, but the pilot said the small plane had already descended to 1,600 feet and would not make it. The crash just off the shoulder of Interstate 40 shut down several lanes Monday night, leaving the charred wreckage in the grass.
Now to that incredible rescue on the 2nd Street Bridge. His actions have been the talk of the country for the last few days. Today we sat down with the firefighter behind the rescue.
Bryce Carden stopped by WHAS11 this morning to talk about all the national attention he's been given and to give us more insight into what went into those rescue efforts. The 29-year-old was strapped to a harness and a rope anchored by a Louisville Fire Department ladder truck dangling 100 feet over the Ohio River. And when he got down to the cab of the truck, he handed a harness to the driver, Sydney Thomas, who was still strapped into her seatbelt. He cut her out of that seatbelt. And it was this moment that he was thankful luck was on his side.
You know, that slow motion feeling of like, I need a pocket knife. And I looked down and it just happened to be in my pocket. And I was like, thank God. You know, like that saved the whole rescue, you know. So I was able to I was like, hey, honey, stay right there. And I was able to cut the seatbelt off of her and get her out.
Just incredible. Well, ever since Friday, he has been on everyone's minds, and they've been trying to reach out to the firefighter to let him know he did a job well done.
It's been a wild few days. My phone has finally stopped ringing and calmed down just a little bit, but it's been overwhelming support, and I can't thank everybody enough for, you know, reaching out. And you know, there's a lot of good that has came from it, you know, and I've spoke on before. There's with a lot of negativity going on, this is something positive that I think a lot of people need right now to cling to.
Carden continues to emphasize he couldn't have done the job without the help of his team at the Louisville Fire Department, saying he was just one piece of the puzzle.